Hi, friends. This week, I wanted to share a few poetry books I've rated 5 stars in my own personal library, books that have made me pause, feel something, or think about the craft from another angle. They're all doing really different things on the page, but one thing they have in common is how they approach grief and how they return to it without ever getting stuck. Each one kept pulling me back in a way that felt intentional and layered. So let's get into it. This first book I want to talk about is Autopsy by Donte Collins. I picked this one up because I was teaching a workshop on pantoums and used their poem Teeth, a Crumbling Pantoum as a part of it. And when I use a poem in class, I try, keyword try, to own the book that it came from if I can. It's just something that feels important to me. So I grabbed Autopsy and I'm so glad I did. Even though this book centers on grief, it never feels repetitive. Dante gives us so much variation, especially in how the poems live on the page. This isn't 49 pages of left margin poems, no shade. You can flip through and you'll see poems that stretch across the page, hug the right margin, take up space in really intentional ways. They use caesura, those purposeful pauses and blank spaces, to guide how we move through the poem. It's clear that the layout is part of the voice, and the content never gets dull either. That's what I mean when I say what I'm about to say, which is that this book is seasoned, not just because of poetic forms, though, yes, you'll find pantoum, sonnet, contrapuntal, sestina, but because each poem adds something new. It's all grief, yes, but never bland, never boring. And that's what I love, when a poet can keep returning to the same emotional ground and still find new ways to say it. Personally, this book hit deep. My mom passed away 10 years ago, so I've had time to process, but reading this brought me back to those final days with her. There's a blurb on the back that really gets it. They say these poems are meditations on grief, but they do not try to change it, banish it, exploit it, or make sense of it. They simply sit with it. And that's exactly what I found myself doing, sitting with it. There's a line from the poem Grief again that I want to share with you. It is on page 35 in case anybody has the book and wants to flip to it. Yeah, I'm going to read a little bit from here. So I'm not starting at the beginning and we're not going to go all the way to the end because I'm not trying to get copyrighted. Okay. Let's see. I want to start with, yeah. You wrap yourself around yourself and wail into a naked mattress. Your lover's hand is placed like heated stones along your heaving back. You don't want to be touched and want to be touched everywhere. You show the dean the death certificate and are allowed to stay another semester. Drowning would be easiest, you think, as rain draws razor-thin lines down your bedroom window. Grief is a paper cut at every bend in your body. Grief shaves each bone down to a shriveled white flag. Hello. Grief is a paper cut at every bend in your body. That line just like really stuck with me. So, if you're someone who writes about personal things, grief, healing, the messy in-betweens, or if you're curious about how to take up space on the page in a thoughtful way, Autopsy is so worth your time. You can find Dante on Instagram at just Dante Collins and on their website, dantecollins.com. I'll have the links in the description box below, of course. Moving on to book two, we have Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky. And yeah, I had this one on my radar for a little while, I'm not gonna lie. Several poets that I really respect had mentioned it during workshops as a favorite. So when I saw it pop up on bookoutlet.com, which is honestly where I get about 95% of my poetry, craft, and political books these days, I snatched it up with a quickness. Okay. It took me a minute to actually sit down and read through it. And even once I started, I couldn't finish it in one sitting, not because it dragged, but because I needed to take breaks. Whew, this book makes you feel. So one of the poems that really stood out to me, even before I read the whole book, was We Lived Happily During the War. It kept popping up in spaces centered on solidarity or raising awareness for Gaza and Sudan, and it felt poetic, like a gut punch, one that keeps echoing. I'll actually read the blurb from the back of the book here because it does a great job of setting the stage for what you're actually walking into in this collection. This astonishing parable in poems unfolds episodically, its narrative provoked by a tragic opening scene. While breaking up a protest, a soldier shoots and kills a young deaf boy, and the gunshot renders the entire town deaf. In the prevailing silence and against the soldiers' brutal crackdown, the citizens coordinate their dissent with sign language, illustrated across the book. The story then diverges to follow the private lives of townspeople encircled by public violence. And so I'm gonna stop there. There's more to it, but just wanted to give that context of what this book is like. It reads like a story. And what I love about this book is how deeply you're pulled into the world of these people. You grieve with them, you rage with them, you cheer them on. Ilya gives us this full, vivid story, but all through poetry and never once loses our attention. And that alone is such a feat. Something else that really struck me was the way disability is approached in the book. One of the blurbs on the back says that Ilya is re-envisioning disability as power. So often people frame disability as a weakness or something to be pitied, but here it becomes a source of resistance, of strength, of choice. There's a quote from Ilya himself where he says, "The deaf do not believe in silence. Silence is the invention of the hearing." And that line really stayed with me. I don't want to give too much away for those of you who haven't read it yet, so I'll read a little bit from one of the earlier poems in the book. This one is on page 12. I probably should have like bookmarked them. As you can see, I have a lot of tabs on this book and on the previous book. I was filling the poems. And this is coming from As Soldiers March, Alfonso covers the boy's face with a newspaper. 14 of us watch. Sonia kisses his forehead, her shout a hole torn in the sky. It shimmers the park benches, porch lights. We see in Sonia's open mouth the nakedness of a whole nation. She stretches out beside the little snowman napping in the middle of the street as picking up its belly, the country runs. Whew. It doesn't drag, but it's heavy. It's a heavy book, but just if you're someone who's drawn to like writing about political resistance, grief, disability, survival, or if you're just looking to see what it looks like when storytelling and poetry collide beautifully, this book is absolutely worth reading. You can find Ilya on Instagram at Ilya_poet and on his website, ilyakaminsky.com. Of course, I will be dropping that link in the description box. Third book that I want to talk about is Dear God, Dear Bones, Dear Yellow by Noor Hindi. And I had read a poem by Noor that I absolutely loved. And so when I saw this book at the book fair during AWP in 2024, I had to search it up, got it, and I'm so happy. The poem was in which the white woman on my thesis defense asks me about witness. And I love this poem because one, it's a bit of a gut punch, but also it offers us a lot of tone variation. There's sass, there's sadness, there's backbone, there's softness. It's a hermit crab, which I love. A hermit crab is a piece of writing that, like its namesake, borrows from other forms. This one is in the form of a quiz and uses that to say so much. And in case anyone is wondering what page they can find that on, it's on page 4 of this book. If you can see another book where I have a ton of tabs. In this collection, we get to see the journey of her grandmother obtaining US citizenship, and we see how The folks they encounter along the way are hell-bent on erasing Palestine right in front of their eyes. There are so many moments that were meant to break the spirits of Noor and her grandmother and Palestinians along the way, and yet they do not break. And this is a narrative that we are seeing right now with the state of our country. We're seeing this continuous. This book, I believe, was released in like 2020. Why did I say it like that? I was gonna say 2021, but it's 2022. And here we are, 2025, and it's still very relevant. There's a blurb on the back of the book that says, Noor Hindi wields her poetry with passion and righteous anger in this powerful, striking collection. And yes, righteous anger is exactly why she couldn't be broken. And so I'm gonna read a short excerpt from page 5. As soon as I get to page 5, this is from Fuck Your Lecture on Craft, My People Are Dying, which is another one that was really making the rounds in the past year or two with all that is going on in our world. Colonizers write about flowers. I tell you about children throwing rocks at Israeli tanks seconds before becoming daisies. I want to be like those poets who care about the moon. Palestinians don't see the moon from jail cells and prisons. It's so beautiful, the moon. They're so beautiful, the flowers. Anyway, I'm gonna stop it there, but that was not the full poem, but this poem has that backbone that I was talking about. There's a privilege to being able to care about the craft of poetry versus doing the living of the poem, experiencing the viciousness of what often propels Black and Brown writers to even pick up a pen. Yes, we write about beautiful things too, but a lot of the time we're just trying to work through what's happening in our world and why. If you want to write about your lived experiences and how the world has treated you because of them, this book is a must read. You can find Noor on Instagram at Noor K Hindi and on her website at noorhindi.com. Again, links will be in the description box. So those are the three books that I've been sitting with lately. Autopsy by Donte Collins, Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky, and Dear God, Dear Bones, Dear Yellow by Noor Hindi. And something that I realized while I was putting this together, outside of the grief that runs through all three, is that each of these poets is working with a thread they keep pulling on throughout the book. So with Dante, we see poems with titles that start with the orphan performs an autopsy on. There are several poems that start with that through with that same title. For example, we have the orphan performs an autopsy on the garden. The orphan performs an autopsy on Old Rondo. The orphan performs an autopsy on the national anthem. Like it's just a theme. It just keeps going. With Ilya, it's poems titled Question. There are, I think, 3 or 4 poems that are titled Question throughout this book, and they are all connected. And just is such a really powerful through line. And then with Noor, we see multiple pieces titled Breaking News. And that's their title. They don't change in any capacity. We also see USCIS trip number. We'll have trip number 2, trip number 3. We've got trip number 1, right? There's these through lines that they're creating in their own work. I think that really speaks to the seasoning that, or what I called seasoning earlier. There's actually a name for that in literary terms, a motif or a through line, that ability to circle the same subject, theme, image, or question over and over without it getting bland. It's a skill, it's flavor, it's craft, and it's something I love as a reader when a collection keeps deepening every time it returns to something. If you've read any of these books or if you pick one up after watching this, let me know what sticks with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you've got a poetry book you think I should be reading, drop it in the comments. I'm always looking for new favorites. And as always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with a poet friend if you think they'd vibe with this kind of content. So thank you so much for being here. I will see you next week.